I'd been with Allen Freight Services for 14 years. It wasn't glamorous work, but someone had to keep the trucks rolling and the books straight. I wasn't the guy giving motivational speeches or posting selfies with whiteboards. I ran operations, quiet, clean, and tight. I just wrapped up a record-breaking quarter, 98.7% on-time deliveries, the lowest customer complaint rate in company history. My crew, best I've ever had. A bunch of younger guys and gals who respected the process because I showed them how it worked. We had a small celebration that afternoon. Someone bought a grocery store cake with "Congrats, Karl" written in blue icing, fourth one this year. Not that I cared much, but it was nice. Then the email came, new leadership integration, translation. Some exec's buddy was about to land on my neck. Monday morning, in walks Adam Reynolds, hair slicked back, too much cologne, and swagger thick enough to fill a warehouse. He's 14 minutes late to his own intro meeting, and when he finally shows up, he doesn't apologize. He just drops into my chair, like it's already his, and tosses a crumpled protein bar wrapper onto the table. "Time to shake things up, folks," he says, grinning like he's about to pitch us all a startup idea. The words hit the room, and a couple of the younger guys try to stifle smiles. But it's obvious, no one's buying into the hype yet. We've been running on a tight schedule for years, and Adam's swagger didn't fit here. He said he came from the innovation sector, whatever that meant. None of us, everyone's eyes are glazed over, but Adam's too busy pacing, full of energy and full of himself to notice. I finally cut in. "That routing suggestion you gave?" I lean back in my chair, trying to keep it calm. "It would have sent medical supplies into a closed flood zone. That's not an option." He stops dead in his tracks, staring at me like I just slapped him. Not a word. Just that stupid, confused look, like I'd insulted his dad's golf swing. "Noted," he mutters, voice flat. But there's no apology in it, just a tightness around his jaw that tells me exactly what kind of guy he is. And right then, I knew. This guy was going to be a problem, but I didn't make a scene. I didn't need to. I let him bluster through his little pep talk, nodding like he was making some kind of grand impact. Meanwhile, I already had a feeling he wasn't going to last long enough to break anything. I'd seen it before. People like him, full of ideas, short on follow-through. It didn't take long for Adam to start hijacking our Slack channels. He flooded them with emoji-filled nonsense, like a kid who just discovered how to use the fire icon. No real directives, just empty hype and vague praise. It was as if he thought that slapping a bunch of fire on everything made it legit. One morning, I noticed a message from him tagging a junior analyst, Nate. "Man, you got a vibe." Nate's a smart kid, but he's new. He came to me later that day looking confused. "Hey, Karl, Adam invited me to, brainstorm after the meeting. He said something about post-sync cocktails." He shrugged, unsure if he should be flattered or freaked out. "Did he say why?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Not really," Nate answered, clearly uncomfortable. "He just, seemed like he wanted to, bond or something." I resisted the urge to tell Nate to run for the hills. Instead, I just nodded and said, "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. Just stick to the work." I wasn't going to make a scene, but it was obvious that Adam's idea of leadership was already starting to make the younger crew uneasy. And that's when I started documenting. I didn't plan on revenge, at least not yet, but I knew how this would go. HR doesn't move until there's blood in the water, and Adam was giving them plenty to work with. I created a hidden folder on my personal drive and started saving everything. The ridiculous Slack messages, the ignored compliance notes, the shady DMs, all of it. If this thing went south, I needed a record. I didn't confront Adam. I didn't make any waves. Instead, I did my job, keeping everything running smoothly while Adam spun in circles, trying to look busy. I let him shine. I let him flail. But I also let the junior staff see it. They needed to. The way he was acting wasn't leadership. It was a performance, and I wanted them to recognize it for what it was. It didn't take long before the rest of the team started talking. They weren't sure if Adam was clueless or just playing everyone, but the vibe in the office shifted. People weren't impressed by his catchphrases or his awkward attempts to connect. They just watched him stumble, waiting for him to trip over his own hype. I stayed quiet, biding my time. A few weeks later, HR rolled out culture pulse check-ins. They called it a way to gauge employee satisfaction. A bunch of one-on-one meetings, no notes, no transcripts. I wasn't surprised when guys from my team came back looking confused. They didn't know what to make of it. One of them, Mike, said they asked him if I created pressure in the workplace. I could hear the confusion in his voice. It didn't make sense to him either. That afternoon, I walked past the break room and saw Adam standing there with Melinda, our HR rep. They were chatting and laughing like they'd just shared a joke, his hand casually resting on her shoulder. It was too cozy, too rehearsed. It hit me then. This wasn't just about new leadership. This was something else, something I wasn't a part of. The next morning, I got an invite for a meeting titled Leadership Dynamics Touchpoint, 8:15 a.m., room 3B. The name itself sounded like something from a corporate self-help seminar. I didn't need to look at the sender. I already knew who it was from. When I walked into room 3B, Adam and Melinda were waiting for me. They looked like they'd been rehearsing this meeting over wine the night before. Adam had that smug grin on his face, the one he put on when he thought he was winning. Melinda was too calm. Her smile was tight, like she'd just delivered a punchline no one else was in on. I stayed quiet, trying to keep my focus. "So, Karl," Adam started, his voice smooth, but there was a cold edge to it. "We've been hearing some feedback from the team." He looked at Melinda, who nodded slightly, then back at me. "It's come to our attention that you've been undermining leadership presence." I kept my face neutral. "Undermining leadership?" I repeated, though I already knew where this was headed. Melinda chimed in. "Yes, Karl. Specifically, it's been noted that your interactions with Adam have created an environment where he feels inferior, like his decisions are being challenged in a way that's, well, harassment. Harassment." The word hung in the air, like they were waiting for it to hit me. I didn't flinch. "Harassment?" I said again, keeping my voice steady. "You're saying I've been harassing Adam?" Adam leaned back in his chair, arms crossed like he was the king of the meeting. "It's more about your approach, Karl," he said, clearly enjoying this. "You've been, let's say, a little overbearing. It's affecting the team's morale." He looked over at Melinda, and they exchanged another knowing glance. The room was getting smaller by the second. I could feel my pulse in my ears, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of reacting. Instead, I stared at Adam, holding his gaze, and then shifted my eyes to Melinda. "You're both telling me that questioning a routing error that could have cost lives is harassment?" I asked, voice flat. I wasn't raising my tone. I wasn't angry. I just wanted them to say it. They didn't. Melinda's smile tightened. "We're not talking about just one incident, Karl. It's a pattern. The pressure, the constant questioning, the challenging of authority." I sat back in my chair, finally allowing myself a breath. "You want me to pretend everything is fine when it's not? Fine. I'm not the problem here." I paused, letting the weight of it sit. "But you two, you're part of the problem now." They didn't respond. Instead, they just stared, waiting for me to crack. I didn't. "Okay," I said, standing up. "If that's all, I'll be going." I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of a fight. I walked out of that room with my head up, but I knew it wasn't over. I had a feeling this trap wasn't just for me. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I walked out. Adam probably thought he'd won. I could see it in his smirk, like he'd just closed some big deal. Melinda looked relieved, her smile turning to something almost smug as I stepped out. Let them think they had me cornered. Let them believe they'd broken me. But they had no idea what was coming. What Adam didn't know, what Melinda didn't know, I'd archived every single Slack message, every ignored compliance note, every creepy DM from Adam that I saved for a rainy day. I wasn't some fool who would let them trap me without a backup plan. And I'd read every company policy, including one update that most managers ignored, Clause 9.4.7. It had been buried in a pile of legalese, probably slipped into the policy update as some afterthought. But I noticed it. I read it twice to be sure. In any internal misconduct handled by a team with personal or executive connections, shared liability applies. That clause wasn't just a line in a document. It was a ticking time bomb. Adam's dad was one of the VPs. Hell, everyone knew that. And now, Adam and Melinda, both of them, had signed off on that clause 3 months ago. They thought it was just some formality. They probably never imagined it would matter, but it would. It was a matter of time before it all unraveled. I didn't need to say a word. I didn't need to make a fuss. I didn't even need to stick around for their pity. I had my proof, my strategy, and the leverage I needed. So I left. I didn't bother stopping at HR or packing up a box. I wasn't going to let them drag me through some messy exit interview, or give them a chance to claim they did me a favor by kicking me out. Let them run their little show. I was already 5 steps ahead. And the funny part, the best part, I wasn't even angry. Not anymore. I just wanted to see how they'd handle the mess they had made. The night after I walked out, I sat in my kitchen, sipping coffee, letting the adrenaline finally fade. I wasn't in a rush. I didn't need to be. Adam and Melinda had their little victory. Now it was time for mine. They hadn't revoked my system credentials yet, so I logged into the internal compliance portal, 3 layers deep, where most people would never bother to click. It wasn't hard to find what I was looking for. The system was slick, and if you knew where to look, you could slip in and out without leaving a trace. I attached the file I had prepped, Team Comms March. It was a Slack thread where Adam had accidentally uploaded a confidential HR report, his little slip-up that could bring the whole house of cards down. The report had employee names, disciplinary notes, and the big red "Do Not Share" header that made it clear he wasn't supposed to share it with anyone. But that's exactly what he did. Posted it in a team-wide channel, no password protection, no private folder, just out in the open for everyone to see. He was the kind that would make him spit out his coffee, double-check the timestamp, and realize that Adam had just pulled the pin on a grenade. A massive breach of confidentiality that triggered clause 9.4.7, the very clause that tied Adam, Melinda, and everyone else in leadership with executive connections to shared liability. I didn't need to do any more. I had the proof, and the company policy would handle the rest. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of it settle. It was almost too easy. Let Adam keep running his mouth. Let Melinda play her little games. By the time they realized what had happened, the wheels would already be in motion. I didn't care if they tried to cover it up. It was too late. That report had already been seen. It couldn't be unsent. They were on the hook now. Not just Adam, but everyone who signed off on the policy. And I'd be watching from the sidelines, knowing exactly how it would all play out. By the time I heard the first whispers of the company's legal team scrambling the next morning, I knew it was done. They were already deep in damage control mode. And Adam? He wouldn't know what hit him. The next morning, the storm hit. Don, the company's lead legal counsel, read the report I'd flagged, and I could almost hear the blood drain from his face. He damn near dropped his coffee when he saw Adam's name, the breach, the clause, and what it meant. Executive exposure, HR liability, and possible audit triggers. He'd probably spent the last few months covering up minor infractions. But this was different. Don didn't call anyone immediately, not at first. Instead, I imagine he sat there, staring at the screen, going over it all again. Clause 9.4.7 was the trigger, and he must have realized in that moment that it wasn't just Adam who was exposed. It was Melinda too, and anyone else who had given him free rein to screw around. I wasn't in the room when Don made the call, but I could feel the ripple effect. By noon, Melinda's review of my case had been flagged as issue resolved, employee exited voluntarily. That lie would haunt her. It had already tied her to the fallout. And it wasn't just the mistake of brushing me off. It was her complicity in letting a fresh-faced kid with 0 experience waltz in and wreck shop without anyone holding him accountable. The CFO was pulled in next. Then, the CEO. I bet Adam's dad got a call too, though it was probably less of a father-son chat and more like an urgent boardroom emergency. Adam's last name, the one that used to protect him, wasn't going to do a damn thing now. He thought his old man's position would keep him safe, but the company's policies were airtight. I'd made sure of that. And me? I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to wave my hands around and demand justice. No, I just lit the fuse and stepped back, letting the system take care of the rest. It was too late for them to cover it up now. They were already tangled in the very web they thought would protect them. By the time HR and the legal team had scrambled enough to reach the CEO, I could almost hear the panic in their voices. They were too far gone to fix anything. All I had to do was wait for the inevitable, the implosion of everything they thought they could control. I had done my part. They'd buried themselves in their own lies, in their own incompetence. I didn't need to say a word more. The fallout would come, and it would be spectacular. By lunch, Adam was gone, badge deactivated, project access revoked. His LinkedIn profile switched to pending update, like he never existed. The HR and legal teams scrambled to clean up the mess he had made, but it was too late. Melinda was placed on leave, no doubt while they tried to figure out how deep her involvement went. They could keep playing their game of pretend, but the truth was out, and it wasn't going away. That afternoon, the CEO sent out an internal memo about whistleblower-led change. No names mentioned, of course. They weren't stupid enough to do that, but people knew. Hell, everyone knew. I didn't need to make a statement on social media or get into some online fight. I wasn't that guy. I didn't need to shout from the rooftops. I just did what needed to be done. I walked into Don's office that afternoon. One sentence on a piece of paper in front of me, my resignation letter. It wasn't long, it didn't need to be. Just a clean break, no mess. I handed it to him, no explanation needed, and walked out. They offered me a settlement, more money, more legal jargon, more attempts to buy me off. I didn't take it. I didn't want their money. What good was that going to do me? What I wanted was something more lasting, accountability, the kind that couldn't be hidden behind a paycheck or a non-disclosure agreement. I wanted a record of what happened. I wanted them to know exactly what they'd done and what they'd allowed. 3 days later, Riverton posted a corporate policy change on LinkedIn. Anonymous whistleblower prompts compliance overhaul. It wasn't just some PR stunt. That policy, it was a direct result of everything that went down. They had to admit something went wrong, but they couldn't point to a single person. No one could say my name, but it didn't matter. My crew knew. The junior analysts knew. Hell, half the warehouse knew. They'd seen it all unfold. As I walked out for the last time, past the posters on the wall that said integrity and respect, I couldn't help but laugh. They didn't matter. None of those slogans meant anything until someone forced them to. Let Adam think he won some fight. He could keep wearing that grin like a trophy. I didn't come to fight. I came to win.